Recently, I saw a video about something called geometric nightmares, and this brought up a bunch of memories from my childhood that I kind of forgot about. But I really wanted to talk about them now to see if anybody else has had similar experiences, because they're just really strange. And for me, they weren't just dreams. They were kind of just my reality. A lot of this happened while I was wide awake, which is something that I haven't heard from very many other people concerning this matter, or concerning this experience, I guess. My earliest memory of having one of these geometric nightmares was, I was very, very young. I don't remember how old I was. And I was getting ready for, I think, my first day of kindergarten. And I was sitting on my dad's lazy boy recliner while my parents got my clothes for the next day ready. Yeah, I remember my mom was folding them into neat little piles, and I think she was going to put them somewhere so that I could get dressed quickly in the morning. I was sitting there on the chair, and I must have fallen asleep, but suddenly I was like 100 feet in the air, because the seat cushion of the chair became this like large lump, I guess, that pushed, like, I was just sitting there and suddenly it started to rise up, like a weird lump was pushing me up really high, and it was pushed me up higher than our ceiling was. Like, it was way high, and I could look down at my parents. My parents were still in the same position they had been when I fell asleep, but they were just kind of calmly looking up at me, and I was sitting on the top of this lump, just screaming and flailing around because I was terrified. I was just up really high, and all I could see were my parents down on the ground just looking up at me, and I didn't know what to do, and everything just looked and felt wrong, and it was really bizarre. I remember screaming and crying, and next thing I know, I was waking up on the chair, and my parents and my siblings were all really freaked out, and my parents didn't know what to do. They took me to the doctor, who told them that I was just a night terror, and so we just kind of shrugged it off. My parents were told to just keep an eye on me, and if it happened again, just let me go through it. Don't try to wake me up, just let me do whatever. Yeah, that was the first time I remember it happening. The second time I remember it happening, me and my mom and my two older sisters and my younger brother were all driving in my mom's old Impala. I don't remember where we were going, what we were doing exactly, but I must have dozed off. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up. I guess I just woke up suddenly with this overwhelming fear that I needed to grab the steering wheel from my mom to keep us from crashing. So I went forward from the back seat all the way to the front and was grabbing the steering wheel from my mom. My mom's like, "What the heck's going on?" And she's trying to keep control of the vehicle while I'm screaming like a madman, trying to wrest control of the steering wheel from her. And my sisters are trying to pull me back, and my brother, I don't know what he was doing. He was probably crying, because I think he was 1 or 2 at the time. And I'm just screaming and crying, and I needed to grab that steering wheel because we were all going to die if I didn't. And it was wild. And eventually my mom and my sisters were managed to pull me back and hold me down, and I don't remember what happened after that. I either woke up later in the car or something, but that was the talk of the household for the rest of the day, probably several days afterwards. Like, what is Jacob? What's wrong with Jacob? What is he doing? Goodness. Let's see if I can remember any other ones. The things that would happen when I was wide awake were strange. I would just be standing there, and I would know beforehand that I was going to have what we started calling attacks, Jacob's attacks. So I knew I was going to have an attack because I would just be sitting there playing with my toys, and then I'd look up or I'd look at something, and the thing would like start to feel really far away suddenly. It could be something that's just sitting like across the room from me, like a cabinet or a lamp or a toy or something, and it would suddenly like feel really far away, like impossibly far away, but also like really close at the same time, like uncomfortably close, but also a bazillion miles away. I know it doesn't make any sense, but that's what it would feel like. And I would know that night I'd have an attack. And so, yeah, I'd go to bed that night, and my sister told me she always knew I was going to have an attack because I would wake up suddenly in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom and then go back to bed, and I'd always have an attack right after that. I don't remember ever getting up to go to the bathroom during these, but there was this one time I remember just waking up on the love seat in the living room. I didn't even remember waking up or having an attack, and I was surrounded by all my stuffed animals, my little stuffies, and my whole family was awake. It was like midnight or something, and my parents were like milling about, panicked, and my sisters and my brother just looked completely dumbfounded and terrified, but they were also kind of laughing, like uncomfortably. And I woke up and they told me what happened, and this is something they would tell me about a lot when I'd have my attacks, so this was a common thing that happened. But I was running around screaming and crying with my chest like bulging unnaturally forward, like my rib cage was just bulging, my eyeballs were bulging out of my head, and my tongue was just like swollen and bulging out of my face, and I'm just running around screaming, going into my bedroom, grabbing the stuffed animals, running into the living room, still screaming, just handing them to my parents and my siblings, just screaming, running back and forth with grabbing these stuffed animals and giving them to my family. I don't remember doing any of this. I was told later that this happened. And yeah, I remember waking up on the couch surrounded by all my stuffed animals, wondering why I was there and why all my stuffed animals were there. Oh my goodness. And like, we would talk about these things later, and we'd laugh because they were just so ridiculous and bizarre. And I remember some of the dreams I would have while these were happening, because a lot of times I'd be having a dream and then I'd wake up and find out that I had done all this stuff. But oftentimes they were just like a feeling, like a sense of, like how the geometric nightmares were described. Like it's just like a shapeless shape in a void, and it's just sense of like unfathomable distance and emptiness, but also an overwhelming sense of being confined. It's weird because it's so contradictory, but it's how it felt. And that was very common, but I did also have some pretty weird dreams. The two that I remember, one of them was like a comic strip. There were these like army soldiers just marching from like a distance away, and I was seeing this all in like third person. I could see all the army soldiers sort of marching in this big white void, just nothing else. But it looked like They were marching from right to left, or I'm sorry, left to right. And I was the soldier in the back. I was seeing myself and all this stuff happening. I was soldier in the back of the line, and I had this idea, like I wanted to hurry up because this marching line was taking too long. So I was like, I'm just going to jump over everybody else to get in the front. And so my soldier self jumped into the air, and about halfway up, as I was clearing the line of soldiers, I was halfway across, and I just suddenly stopped, frozen in the air, like I was gripped by some unnatural force. And all I could do was just flail my arms and legs around, screaming for help, because I was just stuck in the air, like somebody just like froze me there. I mean, I could still move my arms and legs, but I couldn't move from that spot. And I was just screaming and saying, help me, and flailing around, but the soldiers just kept marching along like nothing was happening. And then I woke up, and I was in a weird place, and my parents were freaked out, as usual, and I was like, I realized that I had an attack. I didn't remember any of the physical actions or sounds or screaming that I did in real life. I just remember the weird dream. Another dream, and this one's, I always laugh about this one because this one cracks me up, but I had a dream that I was ice skating on a road in the middle of a suburban neighborhood, and we never lived in a suburban neighborhood, so this wasn't like a familiar place or anything, but I was dressed in like a winter outfit, and once again, this was third person. I was seeing myself ice skating, which I've never ice skated in my life. I'm ice skating on this road, and there's this huge, like impossibly tall hill in the road that went up and over, and the houses just kind of followed the line of the hill. It was weird. So anyway, I'm ice skating, and then I got this really bad feeling, and I looked over at the hill, and from the other side of the hill, this is so ridiculous, from the other side of the hill, a giant steak, like a T-bone steak. Like a T-bone steak came up, giant, huge T-bone steak came up over the back of the hill, and it was ice skating too. And it came up the hill, and it started ice skating towards me, and I started screaming at this impossibly huge steak. And it was upright. It wasn't like flat. It was upright steak with ice skates on, coming to get me. And it was just like unfathomably large. My brain just couldn't comprehend how big this steak was, coming up over this hill and skating down towards me. And I'm screaming and trying to skate away, but I'm not fast enough. And I woke up from that one, having one of my attacks again. So yeah, that was one of the weird dreams that I had. Like I said, I didn't always have dreams. Sometimes they were just the formless void, random geometry kind of dreams, and sometimes they were these vivid, weird dreams. And this happened all throughout my childhood until I think I was 16 when I had my last attack. But this one was much different than the others. And I sometimes don't want to lump it in with the rest of them, but the way it felt so similar to what I had experienced when I was younger that I group it with the rest of them just because of the familiarity of how it felt when it happened. But the story goes, we had been living in our garage while our new house was being built on our property. And so the house was almost completed. We hadn't moved anything in yet, and we weren't officially told we could move in, but the water was hooked up, the electricity was hooked up. So we would go in there and we'd take showers and wash dishes and cook food and stuff. And because it was only like a few weeks before they were completely finished anyway. And one night, me, my dad, and my brother decided to camp out in the house with the cots we had been sleeping on in the garage. So my dad set up his cot in the master bedroom, and me and my brother set up our cots in the room we were going to be sharing. And so, yeah, we set it up. My brother and I played in the house for a while till it was bedtime. Then we went to bed. I don't know how long I was asleep before this happened, but it felt like it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I just suddenly woke up, got out of bed, and walked into the living room area. It was a big open living room. There was no hallway. This big open living room area. And I just started panicking and crying and walking back and forth. And I just had this, it wasn't like a voice or anything like that. It was just this knowledge, this knowing that if I went back into the bedroom, my brother would die. That was just like the feeling I got. If I went into the bedroom, my brother would die. And so I spent, I don't know how long, it felt like forever, pacing back and forth, trying to call out to my dad, but like no sound was coming out of my voice or of my throat. I couldn't do anything except walk back and forth, pacing and panicking and crying. Too terrified to go back in the room because I didn't want my brother to die. And from the living room area, I could see into the bedroom, and I could see my brother sleeping on his cot. So nothing was really happening to him, but this impression I had in my head told me otherwise, told me that I could not go in there or he would die. And so I just paced back and forth, crying and panicking and rubbing my hands together. I think I laid against the wall for a while, just not knowing what to do. And then suddenly it just stopped, went away. All the fear, all the crying, everything just stopped. And I calmly, as if nothing had happened, walked back into my bedroom, or back into the bedroom, laid down on my cot and went to sleep. And I woke up in the morning, and at first I didn't remember that this had happened until a little bit later in the day, and then it all came back to me, and I was like, what the heck was that? Because I hadn't had an attack in years up until that point, and maybe the change in scenery, maybe sleeping in a new house that was empty, triggered something. I don't know. My brother and I were convinced for a while that it was aliens, that there were aliens doing experiments on my brother, and that's why I wasn't allowed to go back in there. But like I said, I could see in the room from where I was pacing, and my brother was just laying there asleep, completely normal. So since that day I haven't had an attack, but I have every once in a while had one of those waking impressions of just things not looking right, being too far away or too close or just wrong in some way. Those don't happen very often, maybe once or twice a year, and they're pretty mild, not like they were when I was a kid. But I'm always a little scared, especially now that I have a family of my own, that I might have an attack and they're gonna be terrified of me. I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't think it will, just because from what I've read, most of the time those kinds of things go away when people become adults. But we'll see. Yeah, so if this sounds anything familiar to you, or I'm sorry, if this sounds familiar at all to you, if you've experienced anything like this, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your stories. So thanks for listening. I plan on doing more videos like this of all the weird things that I've experienced in my life, and there are a lot. I hope to see more of you in the future. I hope that I can hear from some of you and learn about your experiences. So take care until next time. Keep being weird, I guess. I don't know. I haven't thought of a good tagline for this channel yet. Anyway, have a good one. Bye.